This is a Mayluna Media production.
Hey, and welcome to Synaptic Soul, the podcast where science meets spirit, and we get real about the beautiful and brutal and magical mess of being human. I'm your host, Ava Marie Anderson, writer, mystic, multi-dimensional mischief maker. Quick disclaimer, you may hear the occasional snort, sigh, dramatic flop from my two French bulldogs, Rocky and Rambo. They're the soundtracks of my life, my soul companions, and honestly, the real stars of the show. Someday we'll dedicate a full episode to their role in my daily rituals, emotional healing, and wild spiritual life. But for now, just know that they're always close by, snoring their support. Let's dive in. You know, people always talk about hope like it is this soft, delicate thing, like a pretty little butterfly that you have to protect. But for me, hope's always been a little more feral, a little more scrappy street cat than butterfly. But I learned that young. Like, I grew up in an environment where love had conditions and safety wasn't guaranteed. And when you're a kid in that kind of world, you either give up or you get this stubborn fire in your gut that whispers that it doesn't have to be this way. By the time I was 16, that fire was all I had. One night, I decided I wasn't going to wait for somebody else to save me. I was going to save my damn self. So I packed what I could, which, let's be real, was 3 outfits and the $40 I'd been hiding. And because I was a teenage genius, I wore all 3 outfits at once. I must have looked like a marshmallow with eyeliner. And then I bought a one-way Greyhound ticket from Memphis, Tennessee to Southern California with no plan and no idea how I was going to survive. Just me, my ridiculous layered wardrobe, and this unshakable belief that there had to be something better on the other side of that ride. And that was hope. Not the glittery Instagram quote kind of way, but the raw, I'm going to figure this the fuck out, even if I have to claw my way forward kind. And somehow, even without a safety net, I did. And hope didn't hand me an easy life. It didn't magically erase the fear or the hard nights, but it gave me something to aim at when there was nothing else. And over time, it built the life that I have now. From that scared 16-year-old on a bus to sitting here and talking to you and walking in my own damn truth. And that's why this episode isn't about hope as a wish. It's about hope as a survival strategy in your body and in your brain and in your spirit. It's the kind that'll get you on the bus and keep you moving and eventually land you somewhere better than you'd ever imagined. And by the way, if you hear Rocky and Rambo's Frenchy feet in the background, just know that they're a part of my hope story too. All right, let's just start with the fact that out of all the words in the English language, in a world where you could be searching for how to get abs in 7 days or how to ghost my situationship without bad karma, the word that people are typing into Google almost more than anything else is hope. Yeah, not money, not sex, and not Taylor Swift tour dates, but hope. And before you roll your eyes and think, well, duh, everybody wants to feel good, let me just stop you right there because hope isn't about feeling good. It is about survival. It's the mental and spiritual equivalent of oxygen. You can be broke and heartbroken, living in a tiny apartment with questionable plumbing, but if you have hope, your body will mobilize resources to keep you alive, and that's no exaggeration. Hope is a biological lifeline. And here's the thing most people don't realize. Hope isn't some abstract hallmark concept. It's not a pastel quote on Instagram thing. It is an actual neurological event. Your brain and your body physically change when you feel it. When you are in a hopeful state, you're not just thinking positive. You're releasing neurotransmitters and rewiring neural pathways and literally strengthening the hardware that lets you adapt and heal and push through whatever dumpster fire is in front of you. And we don't go searching for it when life is peachy. Like, nobody's laying on a beach in Maui with a cocktail Googling how to find hope. We search for it when the bottom drops out, when the job disappears, and when the diagnosis hits. When we wake up in a world that feels like it's shaking itself apart. The fact that hope spikes in global search trends during pandemics and political upheavals and wars, that is not random. That's your nervous system doing exactly what it's wired to do when shit gets uncertain, which is scan for a signal that the future is still worth moving toward. And then here's the beautiful paradox: hope is both primal and sophisticated. Primal because it's older than language, and then sophisticated because it engages the same parts of your brain that you use for planning and problem solving and creativity. Like when you think about a better future, your prefrontal cortex lights up like Times Square. Your dopamine system kicks in not to give you the cheap thrill of a TikTok hit, but to fuel your motivation for long term goals. Hope is literally the chemical signature of keep going. And now let's just go ahead and throw a little side eye here because I know some of you are already picturing that friend who tries to bypass reality with good vibes only, and that is not hope, dude. That is toxic positivity in a crop top. Because real hope doesn't ignore the fire. It says, yeah, I see the flames and I'm still looking for the water hose. Like you can be hopeful and still be pissed off and grieving or absolutely exhausted. In fact, those feelings are often what makes hope essential because without it, you stop moving entirely. So, why do we keep Googling hope? Well, because deep down we know it works. And not in like a manifest a yacht type of way, though if that's your thing, I will happily join you on deck. But in the my nervous system is screaming and I need something to calm it enough so that I can take the next step kind of way. Hope says, we're not done yet. And that tiny sentence, whether it's whispered in prayer or chanted in protest or quietly searched on your phone at 2 a.m., it can be the difference between giving up and holding on one more day. So, in this episode, I'm going to show you why hope isn't naive or fluffy. Like, it is rebellious as fuck. We're talking brain scans and ancient survival strategies and spiritual traditions that treated hope like a sacred tool. And yeah, maybe a little loving roast of that toxic positivity cult. Because if we're going to understand why hope keeps showing up in our collective search bar, then we've got to look at the science and the neurology that proves that it works and the spirit that's been carrying it on for centuries. And spoiler alert, by the time we're done, you're going to see hope less like a wish and more like a fucking survival skill. All right, here's where we leave the pastel Pinterest quotes at the door and we get into the good stuff, which is your brain on hope. And spoiler, it is sexy as hell in here. So, when you're feeling hopeful, your brain starts cooking up a very particular chemical cocktail, and that star ingredient is dopamine. And now, most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical, but that's outdated science. Dopamine isn't about pleasure, it's about motivation and anticipation. It's your brain's way of saying, oh, something good might be coming. Let's just scooch on over toward it. It's also like an internal hype man who's just a little too loud at the wrong moments, but you love him anyway. And this dopamine release, it's not just a mood boost. It literally shifts your entire operating system. It fires up your prefrontal cortex, which is that part of the brain responsible for planning and problem solving and executive function, which translation hope makes you smarter about your future. Like it literally gives you more mental bandwidth to see solutions and then make decisions that align with where you want to go versus where you are right now. And at the same time, hope calms down your amygdala, which is that almond shaped little fear gremlin in your brain whose entire job is to scream, danger, danger, we're all gonna die. And the amygdala is important for survival, sure, but when it's overactive, you live in a constant state of oh shit that fries your nervous system and then shuts down your higher thinking. So, hope turns the volume down on that alarm so that you can actually get some work done instead of running around internally like a caffeinated raccoon. And then here's the part that makes me nerd out. Hope boosts neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to rewire itself. When you're hopeful, your brain believes the future can be different, and then it starts preparing for that difference. It literally strengthens the neural connections that you'll need to adapt. And think about that. Your belief in a better outcome changes your physical brain structure. And this is not woo. This is MRI machine level proof. And yeah, there's a ton of data to back this up. Dr. Shane Lopez, who basically dedicated his career to science, the entire science of hope at Gallup, found that hopeful people are healthier. They perform better and they live longer. And we're not just talking about a few days, like we're talking about years longer. And then other studies show that when people visualize a positive future, areas like the anterior cingulate cortex light up, which help regulate emotion and keep you steady under pressure. And this is why I keep saying that hope is hardware and not just software. Like, you can be in the middle of absolute chaos, but if you've got hope firing in your brain, you're more resourceful and more resilient and more able to spot opportunities that you would otherwise miss. And it's not that the hard stuff disappears, it's just that your brain gets better at navigating it. And now here's where your loving but firm bestie moment. Like, if you've been telling yourself it is pointless to hope, you're not just being cynical. You are cutting off one of your brain's main survival tools. You might think you're protecting yourself from disappointment, but neurologically, you are robbing yourself of the very chemical and structural advantages that would help you get out of the hole that you're in. It's like refusing to eat because you might feel hungry later. So, yeah, hope isn't naive, and it sure as hell isn't fluffy, but it's a neurological strategy. It's evolution's way of saying, I'm going to give you just enough optimism to get your ass moving. And in a few minutes, we're just going to talk about how our ancestors knew this long before MRI scans existed. And spoiler, they treated hope like a sacred survival technology, and they weren't wrong. This episode is brought to you in part by one of my most favorite humans on this spinning planet, Morgan Garza, and her book Soul Magic. If you've ever felt like your power was just waiting beneath the surface, or like there's something ancient and electric inside of you ready to be reclaimed, then this is the book that helps you remember. Soul Magic is not just a read, it is a summoning. It's filled with rituals and stories and the kind of grounded spiritual wisdom that doesn't talk at you, it talks with you. Morgan writes like a soul sister, a cosmic cheerleader, and a priestess all rolled into one. And it's a must-have for anyone on the path of awakening, reclaiming. So grab your copy at morgangarza.com or wherever books are sold, or bless someone else's journey and gift it. Because real magic's meant to be shared. That's Soul Magic by Morgan Garza. You'll feel it in your bones. Here's the thing. Neuroscience is just catching up to what humans have known for thousands of years, which is hope keeps you alive. Our ancestors didn't need brain scans to figure that out. They saw it play out in real time when communities survived disasters that should have wiped them out. And they didn't treat hope like a mood or a personality trait. They treated it like a skill or a ritual and a sacred technology. So, like, take the indigenous prophecy traditions. Across the world, from the Hopi to the Maori, there are stories and teachings designed to hold a vision for a future that might be hundreds of years away. And that's hope scaled up to generational time. So imagine planting seeds that you know you're never going to live to harvest. And that is not just optimism, that is a deliberate investment in survival. And these traditions kept people going through colonialization and famine and displacement, circumstances where logic would have said game over. Hope became a lifeline that was bigger than the individual. And the Stoics knew the game too, but with a twist. The Stoic philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, they didn't believe in hope without preparation. For them, hope was always paired with discipline and acceptance of what you can't control. So they'd say, sure, hope for good weather, but also build a fucking shelter. And it's a brilliant form of emotional insurance because hope keeps you moving forward and discipline makes sure that you don't get wrecked if the storm actually hits. And then the biblical texts, they straight up call hope an anchor for the soul. And that's not poetic fluff, that is a maritime survival metaphor. An anchor doesn't stop the storm, but it stops you from being swept away by it. In ancient Hebrew, the word often translated as hope is tikva, which literally means cord or rope, and that's right. Hope was the rope that you held on to until the rescue came. But let's not forget about those Buddhists. They had a more complicated relationship with hope, seeing it as fine in moderation, but dangerous if you clung to it. And that's because attachment to a specific outcome can lead to suffering when life inevitably does its own thing. And the Buddhist version of hope is more like planting a tree and knowing it's going to grow however it fucking pleases, but your job is just to water it and stay present. And across all these traditions, hope wasn't the equivalent of manifesting a latte. It was a weapon or a shield or a compass. It was embedded in rituals and prayers and seasonal ceremonies. Ancient Egyptians had temple rites dedicated to the renewal of Ma, which is the cosmic order, because they believed a balanced, ordered universe was what allowed hope to flourish. And then West African griots kept oral histories alive so that future generations could hear the stories of triumph over impossible odds, not to romanticize the struggle, but to make sure to, I don't know, that the map out of the darkness didn't get lost. So the takeaway is that hope has always been bigger than the self. And in the ancient world, it wasn't about you getting a promotion or finding your soulmate. It was about the collective, your people, your descendants, and your culture making it to the next sunrise. And if you didn't hold hope for yourself, someone else in your village did until you could pick it back up, which, honestly, that's something that we've lost in this modern world. We've privatized hope. We've made it an individual achievement when historically it was a shared responsibility. In hard times, it wasn't just think positive and fix yourself. It was you can rest now and I'll keep the fire going until you're ready. And that's the kind of hope that keeps whole civilizations alive. So, when you feel like your hope is running low, just remember you're tapping into a survival strategy as old as humanity itself. You are not inventing it, you're inheriting it. And your ancestors used it to get you here. And you're using it to get future generations to wherever the hell we're going next. And speaking of modern hope, let's talk about the knockoff versions floating around these days, because the line between real hope and toxic positivity is thin, and crossing it will mess you up faster than a Mercury retrograde breakup. Not everything labeled hope is actually hope. Some of it's straight up emotional junk food. Like, it looks pretty and it gives you a little sugar rush, and then it leaves you sick and cranky and wondering why you feel malnourished. So, toxic positivity has entered the chat. And you've met it before. It's good vibes only. It's everything happens for a reason slapped over a picture of a sunset, or your coworker telling you to just be grateful when you've literally just been laid off. It's bypassing. And here's the problem. When people weaponize hope to shut down pain or grief or anger, they're not helping you. They're basically gaslighting your nervous system, and I don't care how pretty the font is, that shit is damaging. So, Neurobiology 101. Your body knows when you're lying to yourself. Like, if you tell yourself everything's fine when it is clearly not, your stress response doesn't just magically calm down. In fact, it can ramp up. Suppressed emotions, especially the big ones like rage or grief, increase cortisol and disrupt immune function, and they keep your amygdala in full panic mode. You're basically sitting in a burning house telling yourself it's a sauna. And real hope is not about pretending everything's okay. Real hope says, yeah, that's bad. Yep, I'm scared. Yeah, I'm furious. And I still believe that there's a reason to keep going. And it's that and that matters. You can hold despair in one hand and possibility in the other. In fact, the people who survive the worst situations often do exactly that. They let themselves feel the full weight of the bad and actively look for the right next step. And this is why authentic hope is actually a form of emotional resilience, why toxic positivity is basically just emotional avoidance dressed up in pastel. Toxic positivity tries to plaster over the cracks in the dam with just smile stickers, while real hope looks at the dam, acknowledges the cracks, grabs the duct tape, and calls the engineer. And then let's take it to activism for a second. Social movements don't survive on good vibes only. They survive because they create spaces where grief and anger and rest and joy can coexist. Like the civil rights movement or indigenous land rights struggles or climate justice work, all of them are fueled by hope, but it is a gritty, calloused hope. One that makes room for rage when injustice happens, or for mourning when lives are lost, and then for dancing when victories come, even if they're small. And yeah, this applies to your personal life too. Hope without reality is fantasy. Reality without hope is despair. And you need both because without reality, you're not grounded. And without hope, you're not moving. So, next time somebody tries to good vibes only you out of your own humanity, I want you to picture me, your loving but slightly unhinged spiritual bestie, grabbing them gently by the shoulders, looking them in the eye, and saying, dude, stop bypassing. Feel your shit, and then we'll talk about hope. Because here's the kicker: hope isn't meant to erase your pain, it's meant to sit beside it, to hold its hand, and to say, you know what? We're not fucking done yet. And now that we've dragged toxic positivity into the sunlight, we can end this episode on a high note with an actual science backed and spiritually rooted ways to build the kind of hope that will actually rewire your brain and fuel your spirit and actually, work when shit hits the fan. This episode is supported in part by Sage App, aka the app that's basically a metaphysical multivitamin. It's like having a spiritual sanctuary in your pocket, minus the incense smoke in your purse. It's also where I host my new moon manifestation clubs, which, if you know, you know, we go deep. So if you're ready to stop doom scrolling and start soul scrolling, download Sage in the App Store or Google Play and then step into a more intentional, magical version of your day. That's SAGED, like Sage, but with an app. Back to the episode. Here's the part where we stop just talking about hope like it's some abstract concept and we actually do something about it. Because hope, like a bicep or a butt, is a muscle. And if you don't work it, it's going to get weak and flabby. And no offense, but in this economy and this political climate and this general state of the world, you want your hope ripped and fucking shredded. So let's get into the science-backed stuff. So, mental contrasting is when you picture your future goal as vivid and as detailed as possible. And then you imagine the obstacles that you're going to face on the way there. It sounds depressing, right? Wrong. Your brain actually loves this because it forces it to start wiring in solutions before you even hit the roadblocks. And this is why athletes visualize both winning and tripping on the hurdles so that their body already knows how to recover if they stumble. And then there's gratitude, but like the real kind. Not the I should be grateful because other people have it worse guilt trip crap. That is shame wearing a name tag that says gratitude, by the way, and it's absolute bullshit. I'm talking about actively noticing what is good and then letting yourself feel the warm fuzzies without comparing it to anybody else. This actually strengthens the neural pathways tied to contentment and possibility, which, by the way, the perfect soil for a hope to grow. And then we've got specific visualization. Hope gets stronger when you're specific. Like, I hope things get better is vague and it's unconvincing. I hope to be living in a light-filled apartment near the ocean by 2026 gives your brain something to latch onto and then to start looking for. And when you pair those visions with concrete action steps, that's when dopamine rolls up like, hey, I got your motivation covered. And then let's just switch to the Mystics Toolkit, which, if you've been paying attention, is basically the same thing in different packaging. So let's talk about prayer as mental rehearsal. Whether you believe in God or the universe or your ancestors or your higher self, prayer is essentially the act of speaking your hope into existence while organizing your mind around it. It's setting intention and then aligning your energy. Scientists call this focused attention. Mystics call it calling it in. Same game, different jerseys. And then we've got seasonal or lunar rituals. Our ancestors marked time with ceremonies tied to renewal, like solstices and new moons and harvest festivals. These moments were collective reset buttons, keeping hope fresh and connected to natural cycles. You can recreate this in your own life by setting intentions or doing reflective rituals at the new moon or on your birthday or any day that feels like a turning point. And then in almost every culture, hope was kept alive through stories, tales of survival, resilience, miracles. And it's not just entertainment, it's brain training. Hearing about someone else overcoming impossible odds activates the mirror neurons in your brain to make you feel like you can do it too, which, neurologically speaking, makes you more likely to actually try. So here's the secret sauce, dude. Scientists and mystics aren't actually on opposite sides here. They're describing the same phenomenon in different languages. Science says hope strengthens neuroplasticity and motivates goal directed behavior. Spirituality says hope keeps your soul tethered to possibility. And both are right. So if you want to practice hope like a badass, you don't have to pick a side. Just visualize your future and light a candle for it. Plan your steps and pray on them. Write your gratitude list and say it out loud under a full moon, and be the scientist in the lab and the mystic at the altar. Because at the end of the day, hope doesn't care how you build it, just only that you do. And let me leave you with this. Real hope isn't naive, and it's not just optimism with a cute hat. It is an act of rebellion. It's looking at the chaos and the heartbreak and the storm clouds and saying, I see it all, and I am still building the goddamn boat, and that is not weakness. That's power. That's survival. And bro, that is the most Googled word in the world for a reason. If you loved this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a glowing review. It helps more beautiful souls like you find this space. Because your words matter, your energy ripples, and every review is like a little spell of support for the Synaptic Soul mission. So until next time, stay curious, stay cosmic, and keep waking the F up.